some on-camera stuff. I've worked on a couple TV shows like 911 and Longmire and Friday Night Lights and Bones, which was very cool. For writing, I got to write an anime called Dance with Devils, and I also got to write a Stripe Witches movie, which was pretty fun, because I also get to voice Yoshika. And I got to direct and act in a little show called Kotaro Lives Alone on Netflix, which I love, and I got to voice Kotaro as well, which is pretty special. So for this panel, I usually do a little bit of like a choose your own adventure. If you guys have questions, I'll answer questions. Usually people want to know how to get into voice acting, how I got into voice acting. And it's such a tricky question to tell people how to get into voice acting because everybody's path is a little bit different. I started because I wanted to be an actor when I was 4 or 5 and told my parents I wanted to be an actor and they were like, okay. But my mom tried to discourage me in every way possible, like putting me in acting classes with kids a lot older than me, so I would see it was hard and want to quit, and I thought it was great. And then she took me to an all-day open call audition for Miracle on 34th Street and was like, she's gonna hate waiting in line, only to say like 2 lines. And they kept letting me go back and audition again and again and again, and I was like, Mom, this is the best day ever, can we do this every day? And my mom was like, no. She's right, it is a really hard business and there's a lot of days it honestly tears your heart up. If you're an actor or have pursued any sort of artistic career, you get it. You create something and you hope that everybody's gonna love it and you put your heart out there and they're like, yeah, we just don't really like this. You're like, that's fine, this is my soul, it's fine. It's very much unlike a dating thing where they say, look, it's not you, it's me. It is them saying, it is you. We're still gonna make the project. We're just gonna work with somebody else, it's fine. So, after I told my mom, I don't care how bad it's gonna be, I wanna be an actor. My goal was to be on Barney. I did not get to be on Barney. I worked on another project called Prayer Bear with the production team of Barney. And also did another pilot with the same production team called Camp A-OK. And I thought if I worked with them, they'd be like, she has to be on Barney. And they pulled me aside and they're like, so we hear you want to be on Barney. I was like, this is it. This is my dream. And they said, we're not gonna put you on Barney because we think it's gonna ruin your career. And I was like, what? But Barney is my life's goal at like 8. But I mean, it all happens in the way it works out as it should. Everybody has a different path. Some people are meant to work on Barney and have a fantastic career, and other people are not meant to work on Barney and their career takes a different path, and you have to go with the path that's meant for you. But yeah, I worked on a number of things. I definitely would not have probably found voiceover in anime, and I started working in voiceover when I was 7. And had been doing film and TV stuff. And my agent just said, after I graduated, I was in my senior year of high school, she was like, so there's this place called Funimation. They don't like to work with kids that are in high school because you have to record during the day and they can't take you out of school. But since you're about to graduate, why don't you audition? And I was like, okay. So I went and auditioned for a show called Peach Girl. And they called and said I got cast as Psy. And I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna record full time. I got a part-time job at a clothing store because I got to be an adult now that I'm out of high school. And they're like, we'll work around your schedule. I was like, great. Okay, I don't want to get fired from 2 jobs at once. And that's the trick of being an actor. You always have to have a backup plan and another job. And then they'll say, drop everything, give us all your time for 3 days, 6 weeks. And you're like, but I got this other job that pays my bills the rest of the time. So you got to try to find flexible employment that will have your back or ways that you can make it work. Or, if you're an actor, you say, I'll take a lot of extra late nights and record till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning so I can do all the jobs so that I don't get fired because I know I gotta pay my rent more than just with this one job. So, all that being said, how to get into voice acting, my advice is become an actor, because if you just want to be a voice actor, that's cutting your jobs that you could book by like a quarter. because then you're cutting out commercials, you're cutting out industrials, you're cutting out plays, you're cutting out film, you're cutting out television. And there's a lot of voice actors that say, well, I don't want to be on camera. And I'm like, well, before the internet, I can understand how that might seem viable. But now, as you guys know, voice actors are very much online. They have an online presence, or we have the opportunity to get to promote things on camera. And you don't want to lose opportunities because you see a camera and freeze up. So anytime you can take on camera classes, that's always helpful. But I always tell people, take as many classes as you can just to be an actor, because you never know what's going to come in handy. Motion capture, those super fun games that come out, and wearing all of the cool unitards that aren't flattering on anybody. We get to work on like the coolest stuff. It's literally black box theater. It's getting to do stuff in the round where there's no set, there's no props, there's no nothing. They might be like, here's a PVC pipe that's supposed to be this huge weapon, and you have to imagine it. And if you've had theater training, you're like, dude, I got this. If you've never had any theater training, you're like, you want me to climb up some invisible rocks? But there's nothing here. If you're a theater actor, you're like, okay, how tall are the rocks? I got it. So it all helps inform the experience that you can use as an actor. And people will say, well, it's just not my comfort zone. Dude, the whole point of being an actor is to like step outside of your comfort zone, and that's why I think actors do. We're all scared, we're all shy, but we get to jump into these characters, borrow their lines, borrow their words, borrow their costume, borrow their characteristics, and then at the end of the day we go, wait, that was me that did that. I guess I'm a little bit braver than I thought I was, or I guess I'm a little bit more capable than I thought I was. So, it doesn't matter if you're taking classes online, at a community college, in your community theater, hang out with your friends, printing out scripts that you see online, just practice reading, practice acting, practice creating a character. Cold reading is a must. We never get our scripts ahead of time. Usually the first time that I'm reading a line is the first recorded take. And ideally, they would like to get that to be the one take that they record. So practice, 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 reading out loud, feeling comfortable, getting the script for the first time and being able to make choices with it. A lot of people also like to ask the difference between video games and anime. With anime, obviously, it is coming from a different, usually, it's coming from a different country. And so we have the animation and the initial audio track already set up. We've also had a wonderful adaptive writer who has spent hours and hours trying to get the script to feel as nuanced and relatable and also true to the translation as possible while still making it fun and something that an audience that has never had any sort of awareness of Japanese culture or Chinese culture or whatever the original language was makes it feel like, oh yeah, I'm watching this for the first time and I love this and I can understand this without any sort of context. They have spent so much time on that script that we don't get to ad-lib, usually, unless the line doesn't fit, and then it's the director's job to rewrite it. So usually those lines have been just poured over blood, sweat, and tears, and they usually fit pretty great if you take the time and can figure it out and finesse it here and there. But because we have the animation and because we have the script already preset, it is our job as an actor to make it feel like we're seeing it for the first time, that it's honest and that it's real and that it's fresh, and that can be a challenge in itself. For a video game, we usually don't have any animation. We are recording in a box by ourselves with a script. We don't have context. Most of the time, the video game is not being recorded chronologically. So, for example, for Cyberpunk, you guys create your own path. So I can't really, as I'm trying to record the game, go, okay, this happened, so this has to happen, so this has to happen. Well, no, because if I play the game, it's going to be a very different experience than the way my brother plays a game or somebody else plays a game. So you have to keep it very fresh and say, this could happen or this could happen. So it's a lot of remembering things and also really relying on your director and your producer to let you know. So there are some things that have happened. We haven't finished this script. This will fit in the gaps here. So you're really trusting everybody, whereas with the anime, you're really trusting the animation. All of that is already set in stone. So there are different challenges, and there are also very different ways that you can take some freedom and feel very liberated by the creative process. Some people like to ask questions about agents. I don't know if that's something that interests you guys. I will help as best as I can, or finding classes and things like that. I don't know the New York market super well, but I will do my best to answer questions if that's something that interests you. Or I can answer some other questions. You guys let me know which path you'd like to take if you have a question. Yes?
As I was actually watching a bunch of like YouTube videos where they're featuring like bloopers and stuff like that. Where do you get time to do actual bloopers like that? Because I saw one with the Sword Art Online one, which is like the biggest popular one, which I thought was like, why was this on my recommendation? But so I went on there, I was like, wow.
Yeah, before the time of simuldubs, which I guess probably happened, I don't know, it's probably started happening about 8-9 years ago. And in case you're unaware, simuldubs are when the US release of an episode or a series comes out either at the same time as the Japanese series or right on the heels of. Before all of that, the Japanese release would come out, and then we would get it, and we'd have like a month, sometimes 6 months, sometimes it came out years before, and they would have a set release date in mind, but it wouldn't be like, guys, we have to hit it on this time, we only have a week, we only have, I think sometimes they have about like 5 to 10 days to record an episode. So before simuldubs, we had a lot more time to do bloopers and kind of have a little bit more freedom with that. Now with simuldubs and also with remote recording due to COVID, we don't really have time to do a lot of bloopers anymore because every minute counts in a remote recording session. Like when we were still trying to figure things out right after everybody went into lockdown, there would be moments where they would say, oh my gosh, that was the perfect take, the sync was perfect, everything was perfect, but we had 2 dropouts. And dropouts are when like Source Connect or whatever tech we're using that's allowing them to get the audio just wouldn't sync up, and they'd lose like 2 words or 2 syllables, and so we'd have to do the whole take again, and there might be a dropout in a different place, and then the engineer's like, let me see if I can piece it together. So we don't necessarily have the time to go, oh, can we put a little blooper in here and like see, because all the Sword Art ones, when we would go in to record, Alex Von David, our fantastic director, and usually Bryce, who plays Kirito, he is, I think he would say, yes, I am the ultimate prankster. I think he's very comfortable with that title.
It's facts, because I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he and I are like siblings. We get along very, very well, but like, man, he would play a trick on everybody. He is the mastermind behind many of those bloopers, and he and Alex would talk about it, and they would say, hey, Cherami, do you think it'd be funny if we did this? And I'm like, God, yeah, we'll record it. Let's just record it. Let's just get it out of your system. Let's do it. And then they decided to release them whenever we would do a Sailor Moon panel at Anime Expo. And so then they started releasing those on YouTube, and it backfired because there were a couple of fans that were very, very angry that some of the characters said things that they wouldn't normally say. And so they got very angry that we did that. Specifically, that Asuna said like a bad word in one of the bloopers, and they were like, Asuna would never. And I was like, I know.
I think I know what she was referring
to. So, yes, it was her intro to introduce the bloopers. So I got in a little bit of trouble for that by somebody. And then I think somebody responded back to Aniplex and was like, you know, this is the characters would never say the things that are in this blooper. And so it's a mix of that, and it's also a mix of we just don't have the time because everybody wants to get the anime out as fast as possible. And they just, any time that we're making bloopers means that the mix editor doesn't have time to mix the episode. to get it on. And you guys know the internet. If that episode is not ready to go when it was told it was going to be ready to go, people are very angry. And I don't think if we said, but we got 2 fun bloopers, I don't think that maybe 5 people would be like, okay, we'll allow it. But there'd be a lot of people that were like, I don't care. Give me my episode. Get back to work. So that's why there's been a little less bloopers. But they sure were fun. I enjoyed getting to do that. Yes?
Speaking of Sword Art Online, have you or any of the dub actors seen the abridged parody on YouTube by Something Witty Entertainment?
Yeah, Bryce and I have watched a couple episodes. We were actually at a convention, man, I think 2015, 2016, something like that. And I feel like we watched it like live, like doing a stream with the team from SAO Abridged. It was really funny. We enjoyed getting to watch it. I think Bryce has seen a couple more episodes than I have, but I've watched a few. And they were like, "Are you okay with this?" I was like, "I think it's funny. I think it's great." And it's very flattering that somebody like a show that you want to work on, that they're like, "Oh my gosh, we want to invest our free time and create this cool world and do this fun spinoff." Like, what a huge compliment. So, and they're really, the whole team, they're really kind and really lovely. So they're really great people. It was really fun to get to watch that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yes?
What's it like recording a Pokemon? Like, do you just say the same thing over and over again?
That's a great question. So when I first met Lisa Ortiz, who is the director for Pokemon and has been for years, I auditioned for Chloe, and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get cast in the show, but it'd be really cool to work on Pokemon. And I remember I said it would be so cool, it would be such a challenge for me to voice a Pokemon because it scares me, because it's not words. And how would I do that? She goes, you will. You'll voice a Pokemon before all this is over. I was like, she does not know how much of a weakness this is for me. She's going to eat her words. And so she started explaining to me, she said, so the way that it works and the way that we've kind of created the language for Pokemon is the only syllables that a character can say have to come from their name. So if Cherami was a Pokemon, I could say Ami, Rami, Share. You would be able to break it up. You could say Cherami, you could say pieces of the name, but you can't say anything that doesn't exist in that name. So when I was auditioning for Pokemon, specifically for Grookey, you like see what kind of the animal inspiration is for this Pokemon, and then you're like, well, I want to do this in a way that honors this animal, but also sounds very creature-like, but also feels very cute and Pokemon. I was like, well, what does the monkey say? Ooh, how do I do that? And I was like, oh, Grookey, how do I break that up into using those syllables and making it, oh, well, I could say the would be the key, and I can kind of find a way that way. And so that's how I kind of played in the audition. Never thought that I would get cast, because I thought she was going to be like, nice try, but no. And I got an email back that was like, I told you you'd be a Pokemon. You're going to be a little green monkey. And I was like, because monkeys are my favorite animal, so I was very excited. And then I screamed, and I was recording from home, and I was under NDA. And my husband is one of the biggest Pokemon fans ever. And he was like, you sound like you're being a Pokemon. I was like, no, get outside. But I'm doing my job. So when he saw the show and it came out, he was like, is that what you were doing in there? And I was like, yes. Now I can talk about it. He's like, my wife's a Pokemon. I was like, your wife's a Pokemon. That's weird. That is very weird. So yeah, that's kind of the way that you break down the language. There are some, then of course you have to add in the acting element of like the excitement, the sadness, the fear, the trepidation, the concern, all those different elements. Yes?
To combo it,
Yeah.
I guess there's a few Pokemon that don't say the name.
Sure.
Do you get to choose? Do you get to be like, ooh,
No, I don't get to do that. I feel there's some characters that we don't that I know don't get voiced. Like I know Pikachu does not have an English counterpart. So there may be some where they don't voice them, and sometimes the names are very different. Like Grookey is not the Japanese name for that character, so I don't know if that's how they like kind of negotiate and how all of that stuff works. That would be like a question for Lisa, if she's allowed to answer all of that specific stuff. I don't know all the Pokemon lore and how it goes back many years. They're like, well, actually, this Pokemon goes back 500 years, and 500 years ago, this sound was actually this sound. I don't know all of that, all those logistics, but I'm sure someone does somewhere in a Pokemon encyclopedia. But that's why we have Lisa and a bunch of very, very skilled, knowledgeable people that will check in with and be like, can we do this? Is this allowed? Is this cool? But yeah, that's kind of how we negotiate and figure out all that kind of stuff in the sessions, which is always fun. Yes?
Did you get to meet Keanu at all while doing voice work for Cyberpunk?
Man, I wish. They really tried. I am my own worst enemy about 80% of the time. They scheduled my session early and scheduled Keanu's session late, knowing that I was very shy, and so we would bump into each other in the parking lot was what they thought would happen. And I remember this day very vividly because it was in October, because in October I dress in Halloween attire the entire month. So I looked like a witch from the craft, pretty much. So I'm driving to my session, and I see a man getting on his motorcycle, and I was like, this is like the coolest dude I've ever seen. Who is this guy? Flips his head back, puts his helmet on, and it was Keanu Reeves. So instead of getting out of my car, because he motioned for me to park and like he was gonna wait, instead of doing that and saying like, hi, I'm Cherami, I'm playing V in the game that we're both working on right now, I backed out of the way, and I was like, no, you go. And he's like, no, I'm here. I was like, no, you go. Go. I don't want to keep you, sir. So I watched him ride off into the sunset on his motorcycle. And, yeah. Which is a very, like, Keanu Reeves story of, like, everyone's like, is he as cool as you think he is? I'm like, in my life, he is. And then I parked my car, went in, and they're like, so, did you meet anybody cool on your way here? I was like, no, I watched a very cool man ride off into the sunset. Why did you do that to me? I panicked. And they're like, you didn't talk to him? We set it up so you guys would talk. It would be like a cute little story. I was like, oh, it's a cute little story about how he is super cool and how I am like, oh my God. I don't know what to do. I'm dressed like a witch. I can't do this today. So that was my experience. I haven't gotten to share words with him yet. But he's very, very cool, clearly, and really nice. Everybody's had great things to say about him. I hope I get to meet him one day. I hear his voice regularly in my ear, and now because I've heard it so many times from recording, there are like things that he said in character that like will just pop up in my life where I'm like, all right, I'm turning into her. It's fine. But I will never be as cool as that character, and I'm really okay with that. Any other questions? Yes.
He is breathtaking after all.
He absolutely is. Literally, my breath was gone. I didn't know what to do. Had to back up and put my car in park immediately so I didn't hurt anyone.
But
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I wanted to ask, in terms of when you were first starting your career, what was your, I guess your first really big role, whether it be just voice or an actual acting role? What was your very first big role, and like what opportunities were available to you after that, after your big break?
Wow. So I think that's probably one of the biggest myths, at least in my career, that everybody always says like, oh my gosh, it's just one job, and then, you're gonna be in everything. That has not been the case. For me, like, of course, this job builds on this job, and it's nice to have momentum, but then sometimes it all falls away, and you kind of like keep building from there. And you never know. Like, you work on a project and you're like, this is something like nobody's gonna care that I worked on this, and it's huge. Or you work on something and you're like, this is it. Everybody's gonna be super stoked about this, and people are like, yeah, it's fine. You're like, oh man. So I know as a kid, one of the jobs that it was a huge deal for me. I was 8, and it was my first TV show job, and I got to be on an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. And I was very excited. I got to meet Chuck Norris, and then I got to be back on the show a couple years later. I got to do a TV movie with him, and that was such a fantastic set to work on as a kid, because it's very family friendly. And the first episode I did, I was only there for a day, and then the second episode I did, I got to work for a week. And I remember I got to have a tutor because I was in 5th grade, and so I was taking a week off from school, so they got me an on-set tutor, and I was like, man, I'm a real actor. I got an on-set school tutor. I get to do school in a trailer and then go do a stunt scene where they pour like rubber glass on my head. This is the coolest life. And I remember like I got to work with all these stuntmen, and like one of the stunt guys was like, you know, in order to be a stuntman, you have to be able to eat glass. And like 10-year-old me was like, I want to be able to eat glass. And he took some of the rubber glass that I didn't know was rubber and like popped it in his mouth and was chewing it, and I was like, wow. And he had to be, and my grandparents were on set with me that day because my parents were working. My grandparents would take me to set, and I remember my grandfather watches this guy give me a handful of glass. He's like, put it in your mouth. And my grandfather was like, we'll see how this goes. Like, so I chewed it, and I was like, it's rubber. And so I went around the whole week going up to the guy who's playing the villain of the episode. I was like, you're not gonna get my parents, I can eat glass. And they were like, I thought after that show, I was like, I'm gonna be some assassin 10-year-old. They're just gonna be so impressed by me. That did not happen. I did play a lot of sarcastic kids that like made their parents' lives really difficult. And I feel like that was like a turning point from that episode. So I remember thinking like that was a very big moment for me. And then there's been time like getting to be the lead in a film where I got to work for 3 to 6 weeks, and I was like #1 on the call sheet. Like that was very exciting. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, but it's also so much fun. It was a huge, and I don't think that I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna change the trajectory of my life, but getting to check off like getting to voice a player character in a video game that was on bus wraps and on billboards, and like that's my character on the billboard, was very, very cool. With Cyberpunk, that was really special. And that happens a lot. I mean, there was, and then one that surprised me that I didn't expect at all was I was just directing Kotaro Lives Alone, and I thought this would be a really fun show to get to direct, and I really love the series. And then we were gonna cast a child to play Kotaro, and with the tight recording schedule, there was just no way that we were going to be able to have a child work that many hours to get the show done on time. So then they started having people audition, and my agent sent me an audition, and I asked the producer, she was like, yeah, we're taking everybody's names off of this, so please just send in an audition. And I said, I just want practice, because I don't really get to play child. I don't get to do a lot of male voice kids a lot, so I kind of just want to practice a voice. So she called and she was like, so the production team picked yours blind. They're like, that's Kotaro. Do you think you can do it? Can you direct and act at the same time? And I was like, yeah, this would be like a really cool thing to get to be kind of like the parent directing the show and also the kid. And it was like a very special experience. And I did not expect the response that came from that show. So many people feeling so protective of that character and connecting with that character. And so that was one of those that I was like, this is gonna be special, and I hope some people watch it. But there were, like, I had friends that were like, hey, have you been on TikTok? I was like, no. They're like, you should search on TikTok. There's a lot of people that are doing a Kotaro challenge about how far they can go into the show before they start crying. And I was like, what? We're a challenge? With tears? my favorite. So that was definitely a turning point in my life. I'm like, we have a challenge about how people can feel the most and cry. I'm in. That was great. So, but yeah, I don't think there's been one where I'm like, oh my God, this is my moment. From here, I don't have to worry about a thing. I'm just gonna coast now. I feel like that's, especially with the business now, like everybody's really hungry, everybody wants to keep working, and I think when you get complacent and you go like, oh, I did it, I made it, then you gotta worry about, really, are you? Because other people are working and are hungry and wanna do it. You gotta always keep that mindset, so. Yes?
So, a question I have, what was it like working on a very like dialogue heavy and like out of context game like Persona 5 as Makoto?
Yeah. When I started working on Persona 5, I was aware of the Persona franchise, but I did not know. They asked for demos and had seen our work, so we didn't do a traditional audition for that. So I didn't know when they had brought me in. They were like, so we've heard your demo, we've heard about a bunch of other pieces that you've done, so we want you to work on this game. And I thought I was just doing background voices. And they described all the characters, and I was like, oh man, Makoto is like me. I hope I get to do a scene with that character. So they said, so here we have the class president, and you know, just talking in the hallway, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be reprimanded by the class president. I'm so stoked. I didn't know how many scenes there were. I didn't know how much dialogue there was. Usually when we get called in for a session, they'll say, they're gonna need multiple sessions from you, or you're gonna record this over a couple months. Or they'll say like, it's kind of just this one session. So I just assume if they don't say, you're gonna be recording on this for multiple months, then it's probably just gonna be one session. And so I assumed that Persona was just gonna be one session. I was gonna do background voices. And then when I kept working on it, I think I had like 4 sessions in a row, and I talked to the director and I apologized and I said, I'm so sorry. I know that you guys didn't intend on having me for this many sessions, and I don't want to ruin the budget. If I need to go faster, I will. And she was like, honey, we have so much to do in this game. You're gonna be here for a while. We've got many sessions. I was like, oh my gosh, so she's around like a lot. And they were like, yeah. Yeah, I was like, okay, great, well I'm happy to be here, as long as you need me. I just didn't want to be like dragging everybody down, like everyone's like, oh my God, Cherami over here ruining our lives. So yeah, it was very special. And every time I would finish a Persona session, I would be like so wrapped up in that universe that I remember I would be driving home being like, man, if this freeway were a palace. And that's not what you want to be doing in rush hour traffic. I'd have to be like, no, get back on the road, don't cause an accident. Because I don't think if I told my insurance, like, well, I finished working on this game that I can't tell you about because of an NDA, but I was imagining if the freeway was a game, I think they might have taken my license. So luckily I didn't get to an accident. But because there are so many scenes and there are so many lines, you kind of just like get roped up into it. You like, because you get to work on it so many times, it's like reading a book. When you're like living in that world, you're like, you don't want to leave. It's so much fun to be a part of. And that cast is incredible. I didn't know who all was in the game because everything was under NDA until they announced it at Anime Expo, and they had all of us backstage for the panel, and I was like, you're in this? You're in this? And you're, what? Guys, this is so cool, because we didn't get to hear anybody, so we found out kind of when everybody else found out on that panel, which was really special.
Yeah, it's definitely got an all-star cast.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Following that, working like long sessions or doing any type of projects, is there a routine that you have to do, or what's your routine trying to get into your character? Is there like a mental reset after you do such a long session?
If I was a very diligent person, there are things that I should do to take the best care of myself possible. I have the best of intentions, but sometimes I'm like, it's been a very long day and I'm tired. I don't want to do the extra stuff. But yes, so in an ideal setting, usually if I can do a quick 5-minute warm-up, great. That doesn't always happen because I won't necessarily have time. If I can't do a full vocal warm-up, I will sing in the car because I'm like, well, I'm stuck in traffic, this is a way that I can like prep for my day, and I'll just find like songs as I'm cycling through them, like, yeah, this feels like the session, yeah, this feels like the tone, and I'll just like go through. That's like a fun warm up that gets me into the session, also gets me like amped up to do scenes. What has helped me the best, if I'm diligent enough to do it all the time, and I won't lie and say that, yes, I'm perfect and get it done every time, because I don't. When I would finish a character, I have a journal that I would write down the character that I've played that day, things that came up during the session, either like things about the character that I really liked, or things where I was like, oh man, this triggered something I need to work on in my life, just to kind of like get it all out on the page, so I'm not carrying their baggage, or even if it was like an awkward session and I said something that I felt was stupid, or that I might have upset a producer, which they probably didn't care about, or I said something like awkward, just getting that all out on the page so I'm not living with it and I'm not taking it into tomorrow. I would love to say that I write down all of my sessions at the end of the day, but sometimes I'll have 4 sessions in a day, and having to break down and rehash all 4 sessions when I'm like, I've been recording for 10 hours, I'm so tired, I just want to like stare at a blank wall. I don't necessarily do that. And then the next day I'm usually tired, or I will find like, I get frustrated very easily, and usually that's when I go, oh, I'm frustrated really easily because I just did, 8 hours of Cyberpunk, and there's a lot of heavy stuff that happens in the game, and if I don't kind of consciously let go of that stuff, or rehash that, or because I can't talk to anybody about it, we're all under NDA, nobody's gonna understand, I can't like, explain like, I got Keanu Reeves talking in my head all day, my husband's gonna be like, what? So I kind of try to use a journal to work through that. But yeah, my lazy way to warm up and to unwind is to listen to music and kind of get lost in that and let the music be my therapeutic reset. So that's like my lazy cheat way of doing things. But yeah, ideally I would like to say that I warm up. When I get sick, which happens usually not very frequently, but when I get sick and I start to lose my voice, then my routine becomes a lot more like I have to do my personal humidifier before a session. I have to gargle with salt water. I have to do a hot tea. I have to do my neti pot. Like I have to do all those things before a session. Otherwise, I might be able to get through the session, but I might not, and I'm not doing my best work. So usually I'm far more diligent when I'm a little sick or under the weather or really tired, when I'm like, we have to do this now because we're hanging on by a thread. But yeah, I wish I was more diligent all the time, but sometimes I just get tired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Whether it's anime, television, film, etc., is there a project you're really excited about this year?
Oh, there's a couple, and I'm trying to think if there's any that I can talk about. That's always the trick. It's usually like, well, yeah, so there's a couple that I worked on last year that are coming out this year, and I'm very excited to see how people respond to. Some of them I still can't talk about, but one of them I can talk about, I'm in the new Street Fighter game, which is very exciting. So I get to voice Manon in the new Street Fighter game, and she speaks with a French accent, and I got to have a French dialect coach, which was really lovely and very cool. And I also get to be in a Street Fighter game, which was very fun and very exciting. So yeah, that's one that I'm very stoked that's coming out this year. And I'm really excited about the Cyberpunk DLC as well, because that was very cool. Idris Elba's in that. Like, how
can you not be excited about that?
Exactly. Idris Elba and Keanu Reeves? How can I be this lucky? It's so cool. Maybe I'll get to meet both of them at the same place at the same time, and I'll freak out and run away. That's just, it's the way. Yes?
How was the whole fairy tale experience from getting cast to the character actually playing Lucy and then enjoying the end result?
The one word that I can say for all of it is unbelievable. I could not believe that I got cast as the character. I never thought I had a shot of being in fairy tale. Certainly didn't think I had a shot of playing Lucy. Didn't think that was gonna happen. We premiered it in New York, And the creator, Hiro Mashima, was with us and gave us little keychains of our characters and said, like, thank you so much for bringing this to life. And sat next to me and Todd, watched our English dub and looked over and he said, it's perfect. And I'm like, how is this real? And we have like thousands of people watching this dub. And I'm like, I can't believe this many people are already like excited and invested in the show. This is nuts. And the creator's here. And so it was just unbelievable. And also to think that we've gotten to work on that series for so long and get to do so many different arcs and series. As an actor, you're like, man, I'm just lucky to have a job for a day. And then you get to play a character that you're like, man, I've spent 10 years or 11 years with this character. How on earth have I been so fortunate? And I've been really lucky to get to do that a couple times and get to know the cast and the directors and everybody. I got to write a couple episodes for Fairy Tale, so like the whole thing has been like very, very surreal and completely unbelievable. And then like, you know, just to like really test our luck again, we're like, let's do 100-year quest. Like, please and thank you. So hopefully we'll get to do that. Yeah. Yes.
This is a little random, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but given how you've played so many popular characters that are undoubtedly very popular in fandom culture, what's your opinion on fan works, in particular fan fiction?
Oh, I mean, I haven't read a lot of fan fiction. I've read, like, people will bring up, like, hey, can you check out, like, a page or two of this, or, like, they'll tell me about their plot. I think it's cool. I mean, I don't know if that's, like, the official answer that we're, like, supposed to have, because it's not canon, but I think that as human beings, in our nature, we're supposed to be creative. We need to have a creative outlet. And even if somebody's creative outlet is pottery, if somebody's creative outlet is poetry, is making clothes, is doing cosplay, is writing, and somebody is inspired by a subject matter or a fandom, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a story I want to tell. I think that's great. I think whatever you're inspired to create, as long as you're creating and it's bringing you joy and it's making you feel connection to something, the last thing that we want is a bunch of people in the world who are sad, feeling disconnected and depressed and lonely and feeling like that nobody cares that they're here or understands them. And I think creating, whether it's art or music or writing or anything of that sort, it's a way to like put your stamp on the world and say, I'm here to work through some things, to express yourself, and so you don't keep those feelings and the hard stuff and the really exciting stuff inside. You've got to be able to share that. And if somebody's inspired by a show that I've worked on and want to create their own fan fiction and it's helping them, it can be healing other people or inspiring other people. And that's fantastic, because it just keeps the joy of the show that I've been lucky enough to work on, it keeps it reaching more and more people, and I think that's really special. Yes?
Okay, so, this is the story on when you got casted for Lizzy for Black Butler.
Yeah.
Also, do you know, like, is there any news if there's gonna ever be, like, anything new? Because they haven't done anything since the movie. So.
Yeah, I honestly was shocked that we got to finally work on Book of Atlantic, because I had heard about that and I had signed that manga so many times and was like, oh, please let us do this arc for Lizzy. I think it was really important. I cried watching that the first time, and I was like, I need like 5 minutes before we do it, because I was so excited. As far as more, I don't know. I don't know what the plans are. I would love to get to do more. I know Tatum would get to do more, or would love to get to do more, and I know Brina would love to get to do more, and I'm sure that's the way with the rest of the cast. I remember when the auditions came out for Black Butler. Funimation is based in Dallas, Texas, and there's not many opportunities to use a British accent when you live in Dallas, Texas. And we're all actors, and we're like, oh my gosh, we get to do an accent? And I remember it was a very like cutthroat audition. Everybody wanted to get to be on that show, and everybody wanted to get to do an accent, because as you know, very rarely do we get to do accents in anime. Hitalia is an exception, of course. Black Butler is an exception, and there are a couple of exceptions along the way, but it was very exciting. And Lizzy is like one of the few main characters that's like a young person in the show, so I thought there's there's no way. And then when I got cast, I was beyond excited. Probably my excitement is what got me the job, because as you know, Lizzy loves so much. I always made a joke that she would hug a bunny so deeply and so excited that she loved it so much that she might hurt it. And not mean to, but
Now
she
she's
just
a
loves so
badass.
much.
But now she's a badass now.
Absolutely, she is. She always was. We just needed everybody
Didn't
else to
know.
see it, which is very exciting. Yeah. Yes.
So cycling back to Persona 5.
Yeah.
When you got to come back to do extra lines for Persona 5 Royal, did you find that you were able to put more into the character after seeing like what a success it was with fans, especially
Ooh.
your character?
I don't think the success of the show or the anticipation of a project kind of like makes me want to do more or do something differently. If anything, it just makes me a little bit more anxious and makes me like, oh my gosh, now there's so much pressure, and if I do something wrong, somebody's gonna scream at me on the internet or in person. And so I don't think that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do more. If anything, it was just like, okay, I get to go back and be Makoto and hang out with my friends and get to work with this production team. And it felt so comfortable. And because I knew what she'd been through, and I felt like I got to know her so well from working on the main game, I felt like I knew her a lot better. I knew what she'd been through. I knew what she was going through. And there was less of me asking the director, so is this how she would respond? And it was more like, no, I know how she would respond. I know how she would talk to these people. I know how she feels about these people. And if we had any new content or new characters, or we got a little bit more information, like that was also really great because it helped inform the moment a little bit more. But yeah, it felt like coming home again, which was really cool. Other questions? Yes.
After A1 Pictures is done animating a bunch of stuff that they're currently doing, do you think they will touch SAO again in the future?
I don't know. I mean,
do you hope they will?
I hope so. I remember Bryce sent me a screen grab of a tweet from the creator, and he had said like, "Thanks for 10 years. I'm really excited about 10 more if you guys are ready." And I'm like, we're ready. So if they want to keep creating it, I know Bryce and I will be down to work on it. We would be very excited. As far as what they have planned next and in what order or how they're going to work on it, I'm not sure. Usually I'm the last to know any of that because I get very excited and I tell people at conventions or in a live stream when I'm on Instagram or something like that. So they usually try to not tell me things until we're like recording it and things have already been released because I just get so excited.
Yeah, because the final story arc has been out for a while, and I'm dying to see it get an anime. I'm dying
so
to see
stoked.
it.
Bryce and I have been getting to read the audiobooks as well, which has been really fun. It's really cool to get to have gone back to something that we worked on years ago and get to relive it again and have all that extra stuff that was going on behind the scenes or all the subtext that maybe they don't have time to cover in the anime. And now we have books upon books upon books that we can kind of go through all of it, which has been really cool to work on. So if it means more audiobooks, if it means more episodic work, or it means more movies, I would love to get to see the story continue because it breaks my heart every time, and it makes me so happy to get to go work with that team because we've worked with the same team since we started working on that. The director and writer have been the same, cast has been the same, studio's been the same, and it's always really nice to get to work with the same people who love it so deeply, which is really cool. Yes?
Is there any particular how do I phrase this? Is like in terms of whether it be a game or a movie or a TV series or any sort of media, is there any sort of current pieces of media that you would love to be able to work in the future?
Man, I've always wanted to do a documentary, and I don't know what I would want it to be on, but even a documentary style series. My husband and I created a mockumentary series called Confessionals that we did years ago that we got to shoot with real voice actors playing fictional versions of voice actors, and that was really cool. But I think it would be really fun to get to do a documentary. I haven't really gotten to do anything like nonfiction, and I love getting to do film, any historical fiction, things like that. I love getting to work on that in any shape, form, or fashion. But a documentary would be really, really cool.
Would you like to, would you be in, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out.
No, no worries.
What would your opinion be on possibly working on the Five Nights at Freddy's movie?
I mean, hey, if they'll have me, absolutely. That'd be a blast. Man, I don't know if I'd be able to watch it. That terrifies me. But I'll work on it. I love getting to work on horror projects. I am not very good at watching them. Even stuff that I'm in, because I don't know how they're going to edit it. Like, I'm like, oh, I remember working on this, and this was great. But then they have a jump scare, and I'm like, guys, I knew it was coming. I did it. I'm the jump scare. How did I not know how you were going to edit that? So I love working on horror movies or horror projects, but man, watching them, I'm the worst. I'm like, I got to step outside. Yes.
What was your reaction when you found out you was going to do Ichigo's mother in 1,000-Year Blood War?
Oh, I remember that email. That was like one of the first things I got to do this year, and I was so nervous because it's Bleach, and it's Johnny's mom, and so I was really scared. It was so cool. Ryan, our director, who I've worked with a lot, really cared so deeply about that show and like took care of everything. And I was like, man, I really want to make her grounded and honest and real. And she's very like quirky and funny, but also like, man, she's fierce. And it was really cool to get to see all that. And you don't get to see her for very long, but I was like, man, I really want her presence, though it be very short, to make an impact. And it was very, very special to get to work on that. I really, really loved being a part of that. And also, like, just to get to say that I was a very, 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 very small part of Bleach is, like, really cool to get to say. Like, that's not something that I ever thought would happen. So that was cool. Yes?
When playing as Lucy, what was your most favorite, Zodiac to summon?
Ooh! I know the one that I probably said the most.
Aquarius?
Taurus or Aquarius are probably the most. But like 3 of my favorites, and that, of course, I feel like the other ones are gonna get angry. Aquarius is one of my faves, Virgo is one of my faves, and Loki or Leo is one of my faves. That arc with Leo and the Celestial Spirit King, where Lucy like gets to go and like really just, it's one of my favorites. Where she's just like, this is absolutely unjust. That's why I was like, man, Lucy would be an epic lawyer. Except she'd be like, no, you will. I do not have. My time has not expired. I run this show. She just gets so passionate, and those are some of my favorite moments. It's also I also get very excited when she summons Horologium, because I selfishly love Horologium. I've told many people, I'm like, it's like an adult stroller. Like, if you're just like, you know what, I don't want to walk anymore, I'm going to summon Horologium and send me on my way. Could I summon Plu as well, and then I'll have a little companion in my little adult stroller? Which I did see a mom. She was cosplaying as Lucy. She had her kids cosplaying as different keys. And she decorated the stroller as Horologium. And I was like, yes, thank you so much. And she's like, and I tell them, open, gate of the giant clock, Horologium, sit down. And they got it. So I was like, this is amazing. I was like, I want to film this mom and be like, this is parenting goals right here. This is great. Yes.
So how likely do you think it is that we're going to get season 2 of Miyane?
I don't know. That and Dorohedoro, they keep telling me, like, it's coming. They keep telling us it's coming. And I'm like, But when did they tell you that? Did they tell you that right after we did it or while we were working on it? Because they didn't know that a pandemic was going to happen. So we recorded B&A. I auditioned for it and got cast. Like, I found out I got cast 2 days before everything shut down. And then they called and they said, like, we're just going to wait. You know how it went. We're going to wait 2 weeks. They're like, we're going to wait a month, and then we're going to have everybody come into the studio and you'll record B&A. So like a month and a half went by and they're like, so we're going to have you guys record from home. And I was like, I hadn't recorded a series from start to finish from home. So I was very nervous about that. And they were like, you know, it's such a beautiful show. The animation is beautiful. The colors are beautiful. I was like, surely we're going to get a second season, right? Surely. And they said, yeah, everybody seems to really like it. We're going to get a second season. And I think just with the pandemic and everything that was going on and then other deadlines they had to make, I don't know, maybe we will. But I never say never because I really wanted another season of Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt and never thought we were going to get it. And then last summer they were like, we got another season of Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. Whether or not we're going to get to dub it, I'm not sure. But that was 12 years. So I hope it's not 12 years before we get B&A season 2. But that's how long it takes. 11 is my favorite number, so I'll take 11 years and we get a second season. I would like to not wait as long, but we'll see. I love that show. I think it's so much fun to work on. And I would like to get to record it in a studio and not from home. That would be really special. Yes? Yeah?
Is a lot of stuff recorded from home now, or do you do a lot of studio work still?
Less stuff is recorded from home. I think from 2020 to probably middle of last year, I would say almost everything was recorded from home. Now I have maybe 1 or 2 projects or sessions that record from home regularly. Most of the time, even if I'm working on something remote from a studio in Dallas or in New York or in Chicago, they want me to record in a studio that, like a sister studio to them in LA. So I'll go in to record. Sometimes I'll record from home, like I did an Aldi campaign and they're out of Chicago, and so all of that recorded from home. And I got to be a little known, and that was fun. But yeah, a lot of the anime stuff is back in studio, and video games are pretty much completely in studio just because it was really, really hard having to do like facial capture, wearing the helmet and having to adjust the helmet and all of that stuff by yourself through somebody directing you on Zoom. It's so much easier having another person. So there are some exceptions, but they're trying to get everything back in studio again just because it's a lot easier. And I mean, I'm not an engineer. I really appreciate having people that know all the technical side of things that aren't like directing me of how to do something through a Zoom camera. And I had a tiny little screwdriver. I was trying to do the helmet for a video game, and it was very, very stressful. We did it, but it was so much easier when I went into a studio and they're like, so we're gonna handle that for you. I was like, thank goodness. This is great. And I just love getting to see people. That's the one thing that I miss the most during the process. But I'm very thankful that we were still able to work and we were still able to get to create stuff. I know that I was a very small minority that was fortunate enough to be able to work during that time, which was very, very hard. Yes?
Sorry, I know I'm asking a lot of
No
questions.
worries.
Was there ever a project of yours that wasn't well received critically? And if so,
Oh yeah, totally.
And if so, how did that affect you? And what advice would you give to anybody who also has to go through that experience of like not having something that
I won't lie, and I wish I could say, like I just looked at it and was like, well, I had fun, and what do they know? We're human beings and we want people to like us and want people to like what we do, and I think especially if you're an artist and you put time into a project, I don't even know if that's true if you're an artist. I think that's just a human nature thing, and for people that are like, I don't care what anybody says. My brother's like, nah, I don't care. I don't care what people think. And I'm like, yes, you do. You just get more defensive. Like, I'm like, we all care. We all like it better when somebody's like, oh, I love this, or I love this gift you got me, or this was fantastic. So yeah, it's really hard when you are very excited about something. You spent a lot of time, you worked with a lot of people, you bonded, you were like, we did this huge group project together, we all felt so excited, and we're excited to share it with the world, and people are like, yeah, it's not their best. Or like, this is actually awful, this is terrible. We hope these people never work again. And you read it and you're like, ow. This is awful and it hurts a lot. And I had somebody that was like, yeah, don't read it. And I was like, no, that's a good rule of thumb, but I've already read it. What now? And so I usually just like, if I want to cry, I give myself permission to cry, because otherwise I'm just keeping that like anger and bitterness inside. Sometimes I'll like write it out. And then usually once I get all the anger and the sadness and the grief out, then I just think about like, well, is there anything I would have changed? And if there's something I would have changed, then I make that note to apply in the future. And if there's something that I wouldn't change, I'm like, no, I'm really proud of what I did. And I'm really proud of the people I worked with. And that was a great experience. And I learned this, and this. Then I go, then it doesn't matter what they think. They can have their opinion, and that's totally fine. But I have this experience, and I have this friendship, and I have this project, and I learned this from this project, so that's what I'm going to take away from it. And that doesn't invalidate their opinion, but their opinion doesn't invalidate my experience either. I know people are like, if you don't get the job, it's just because you weren't selected this time. No, but I think it's also important if you don't get the job or somebody says something really hurtful about your project or you get a bad review, I think it's also important if you've read it to not deny it and allow yourself the time to grieve and let it go. Because keeping it inside, if you don't express it and you don't sit with it, then it's that voice that plays over and over and over again in your head, and you hear that review or you see that review or you hear what that person said. So just like listen to it, go, does this apply to me? Can it help me? If it can't help me, then I don't need to keep their voice in my head anymore. It doesn't serve me. So that would be my advice, and I wish that I said that it gets easier, but it doesn't. It sucks every time. Yes.
Yeah, so total tone shift. But for doing acting and doing for television, TV, I'm sure you've traveled a lot of places. Do you have a favorite location that you've gone for work or just traveled to in general that you are very fond of? Or I guess to reword the question, do you have a favorite place that you've like filmed at or something?
Oh man, yeah, it is very special to get to go on location, to get to film stuff. And I've gotten to travel to so many different places for conventions, which is very cool. So I've gotten to travel to places around the world that I wouldn't necessarily have thought. For studios, if you're recording in the booth, a booth usually looks the same wherever you are, and you can be like, I'm in New York, but this looks exactly like the booth in LA, or in Texas. There's like different feelings, obviously, working with those people, but when I've gotten to film on set, I know I've spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh filming, spent a lot of time in various parts of Texas. Obviously, LA is very fun. It's always cool to get to be on a studio lot. Like, you just get to it feels very magical. And I always love when I get to do that. This was a very strange goal, but in LA, and I'm sure you guys have been around New York, you'll see all the filming trucks up and you're like, oh my gosh, where are they filming? And I would drive by them all over, living in LA, and I was like, man, I would love to get to film near my house, like within 5 minutes from my house. That would be so cool. And for 911, we got to film like up the street. I couldn't walk. I was like, man, that'd be so cool if I could walk. So that's like my new goal, that I'd get to like walk to set. But I really, really loved getting to film in New Mexico. I got to film in New Mexico and I did an episode of Longmire. Austin is very special too, but I got to film in New Mexico on my birthday, and I was only there for a day. And usually when you're there for a day, you like have a couple lines, and they're used to doing a crew. That crew was so lovely. They had a birthday cake for me. the producer was like, we're gonna get you on an early flight because I want you to be able to have birthday dinner with your family. I'm gonna rush you out, we're gonna wrap you early. They were really, for me being there for a day, they made me feel like I was part of the family, and that was really, really special. And everybody that I have talked to that's worked in New Mexico said, that's just New Mexico. So that's a very, very, I would love to get to go back and spend more time there than just a day, which would be cool. Yes?
From all the characters that you have done over the years, which character fits your personality and which one would you cosplay as?
Oh, man. Which one fits my personality? So it varies. There's parts of me in all of the characters. And it also depends on the day. I'm certainly not somebody who's going to be very violent, but
This is out the question, right?
I do get very aggressive with my words sometimes, so that is relatable. It's hard to pick like one that I think I'm most like. I guess that would probably be a question for like family members. That they're like, who is she most like? Because it's interesting how we see ourselves, and then like family members and friends are like, oh, interesting. That's not how we see you at all. As far as like what I would cosplay as, I've always thought it would be cool to cosplay as Makoto, because on one of my sessions I sort of accidentally cosplayed as her, not knowing what her character was going to look like. I wore a black vest and a white shirt and like a plaid skirt, and like walked in and they were like, have you seen the art for this character? And I was like, no. So that would be cool. I have done the braided headband many a time, which is always fun to do. That's like a low-key, casual Makoto cosplay. Mai from Ghost Hunt would be very fun to get to cosplay as, because when I was working on that show, I thought we were exactly the same. We had the same haircut. I was like, this is me in an anime. But I do have an Asuna cosplay that I have not worn. And I do have a Sailor Venus, like punk rock Sailor Venus kind of inspired cosplay that I have not worn. It would be cool to get to do a V cosplay. We did like sort of a cyberpunk inspired shoot for just like a headshot. Somebody's like, I think it'd be cool if we made your hair sort of look like this. So we did something sort of like that, which was fun. But yeah, I don't know. Man, it's hard. Cosplay is scary because you're like, man, if I voice this character, I feel like I have to look exactly like this character, and I don't know if I can take that pressure. That would be really hard. Yes?
Is Cyberpunk 2077 really good?
I love it. I mean, I'm very biased, but I love it so much. I love the whole cyberpunk world. It is, I think it's such a good story. It was so much fun to work on. It has some great comedic moments. It has some really, really heavy moments. It has some like very thought-provoking moments. It's a lot of content. Like, I was amazed how much content that they created and that they were still creating as the game went on. I was like, man, this is jam-packed. And I was amazed getting to play the game, and I was amazed getting to work on the game. Like, just from the lines when we were just voicing it and I hadn't seen everything, I'm like, man, this feels so visceral just from the dialogue and how this has been written. Like, it was so clear. So that was nuts. Are we at time? I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. But yes, it was a blast to work on. So I hope that you want to check it out. It's very fun to be a part of. Yes, absolutely. Okay, I think I went over, and I'm so sorry. I totally went over.
Keep going for like 5 to 10 more minutes.
Okay.
If you want, or we can go down.
I will do one more question, and then I'll head out and I'll do signings. And if I missed you and you want to ask me something, come sneak by the table, and I will answer it for you there. Yes.
I don't think this is spoiler. Been out for a long time
Okay.
now. But now that Fire Force ended how it ended, do you think that it's enough hype for Soul Eater to come back?
That's what everybody's been saying. And I was like, yes, please. And then somebody told me there's like new art that was online.
That's what I seen the new art, and I was like, is it coming? I don't think so.
That was what I said. Is this real? Or is this just somebody like creating something online and messing with me?
That's what I said.
I mean, I'm very excited. I hope so. I don't know. I know nothing. But if somebody's like, Cherami, do you want to voice Patty again? The answer is like, I love giraffes. I'm in. Like, obviously. So I'd be super stoked. That was very cool. And I got to be like a little cameo in Fire Force. So that would be very cool to like get to connect those even more. That would be amazing. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming to this panel and letting me like go way over time. Thank you. I will be back tomorrow as well. I think from 2:30 to 3:30. But like I said, if you want to ask me something or you're like, I don't want to talk in front of people, just sneak by the table and ask me, and I'll be happy to answer your question there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.